What the fuck's up, guys? Ed and Cole here from Bro Soda Brewing. And y'all already knew when you clicked on the thumbnail. It's time for another episode of
Wheel of Beer.
The game where a wheel not only selects a random beer for me to brew, but also randomly selects a food item for me to brew into it. Could it be a mayo marzen? Maybe a coconut cream ale? Maybe a gazpacho golden ale? Find out on this episode of Wheel of Beer.
I don't really trust them. Life on my back, yeah, I really had to cut them. She like the vibe, but I do not trust her. Keep it on the low, she tryna blow my cover. Remember the mixtape covers and the tracks that was whack, too bad. I ain't know we had them bars like that, yeah, I got it like that, yeah, I got it like that.
Alright, so let's jump right on into the wheel here. I'll load her up with all the styles and give her a spin. "17C. Brewfather lets me know that's a wee heavy. I like a good heavy wee. You know, when you've casually crushed 8 beers and the floodgates are first opening, sweet, sweet relief. But when it comes to wee heavies though, not as much of a fan. Those malty beers, dude, they're just a little too heavy for me, you know? But let's go back to the wheel and see what delectable food item I'll be brewing into it. I'll slap 10 random foods on the wheel and give her another spin. Green Onion! Well, between the base beer and the Green Onion, this is not going to be my favorite, I can tell you that much. But I'm a slave to the wheel, so I guess it's time for me to head over to my GFs and fucking get ready for this shit. Alright, so I'm back from my GFs with all my ingredients. I'm also back from looking like an asshole at my local Myers for buying up the entire stock of green onions. They were on sale for 89 cents a bushel though, so can't beat that shit. So my plan is to freeze them to break down their cellular walls to allow for more flavoroid disbursement throughout the beer. Then puree those frozen green onions and dump them in maybe 50% at the end of the boil and then 50% as like a dry hop addition to really get that flavor blast in there. I picture like a fruit gusher type deal where like the outside of the gusher is like malt and beer flavor, but then the inside, once you squeeze into it, is just a gush of just green onions right in your face. So here's the recipe. I got this one off some random website. Just a bunch of pale ale malt with some black barley for some flavor and color. And then just a splash of EKG at the beginning to balance out the maltiness and, you know, keep it British. And then some YE Scottish ale yeast. And of course, the onion. When I entered this in, metric shit ton wasn't a unit of measure that I could enter, so it just says 1 drop. It's a lot though. That's the plan though, so it's time to disgrace old Johnny P and bro down. Another beautiful day in Indy. I sure know how to pick 'em. And as sure as the sun comes up, so comes that sexy B-roll. And as much as a good B-roll makes a splash online, a good sanitizing always makes a splash in my pants. If you want to see more splashing, you could always spend your life savings on my OnlyFans. It was time to prep the onions though. So I busted them out of the freezer, chopped them up, and this is bringing me back to episode 1 where I cut up all those turnips. And then I threw them in the blender. After running it on smoothie mode, I was disgusted with the outcome. A green onion puree, looking like a standard drink from Trop Smooth. I'm more of a Jamba Juice kind of guy. When the mash timer ended, it was time for a double fat sack squeeze. Look at the size of this. I feel like my grain order was a little bit overfulfilled. I should not have had this much for a 3-gallon batch. Anyway, as I went to throw this fat sack away, I straight up fumbled the bag. I was trying to avoid ripping a trash bag on the way to the dumpster, but ended up with a much bigger mess. These are the sacrifices that I make for you, my loyal viewers. Once we got to a boil though, I threw in 0.0192 metric tons of EKG, or 1.25 ounces for my fellow Americans. And yes, I forgot to film it. I had a buzz, okay? At the end of the boil, I dumped half my onion puree. The other half I put into a fermenter as a dry hop addition. In the process, I ripped my muslin bag, allowing the onion to flow freely into the beer. Not good. But with no turning back, I dumped the beer into the fermenter. Looking at my refractometer, I also had a lot of diluting to do. And thank God, because as you can see, my brew house efficiency is absolute shit. It was time to finish my brew day though, so I pitched the yeast, gave it a shake, and let it ferment. After fermentation was done, it was time to keg. But before I show you this footage, I just want to preface it with, this was the worst kegging run I've ever done in my entire life. Everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. Let's take a look. So I started off the same as I would any other run. Got my promotional bottle poured, and then moved to the keg. I quickly realized that something was wrong. The pump was not pumping right, and there seemed to be a lot of bubbles coming through, a lot of oxygen. It was like I was pumping foam instead of the beer, which should not be happening. I thought maybe my new pump line was too long, so I cut a portion off. No luck. Then it hit me. The fucking green onion, loose in the beer, was probably clogging up my pump. What I did next was completely unprecedented and one of the worst things you can do. I dumped the remainder of the fermenter directly into the fucking keg, exposing it to filthy amounts of oxygen in the process. To try to help ease the damage, I pumped CO2 through the outline to try and push the oxygen up and out. I'm no scientist, but this is the only technique that seemed to make sense in this moment of crisis. After a high-stress 10-minute kegging session, I had to clean this filth. Here's my pump, clogged with all the onion, which I ended up tossing because I couldn't get it out. I also had to go through the nightmare of removing the onion from the fermenter. Not only did this look vile, but the smell alone literally made me gag. Like, I have a pretty tough stomach, but this might be the first wheel beer that actually makes me puke. Cut forward to a couple days later when it's carbonated. I go to pour my first beer for the tasting segment, and nothing comes out. That's right, the onion's still tormenting me. It clogged up my beer out dip tube. I had to implement another unprecedented move, taking out the dip tube and swapping it with my floating dip tube that I had luckily just bought on a whim about a week before this. I also did this without sanitizing the dip tube, which is a massive fuck up for any brewer. But I had a feeling in the pit of my stomach that I wasn't going to care what happens to this beer after tonight. I struggled, dirty hand touching the vulnerable liquid, but eventually I got the dip tube on, and it was time to try and delete a pint of this sucker.
Not for the faint of heart. Not for the weak-willed. Not for anyone who doesn't wake up hating themselves in the morning. Ladies and gentlemen, it is with no pleasure to introduce Heavy Garnish. A thick and malty British, or Scottish, I couldn't figure it out, wee heavy. Heavily garnished with enough green onion to turn your shit into a 3-star dish. That is, if you're man enough to keep it down. Whatever you had for lunch today is coming back up garnished.
Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're here with the Heavy Garnish. I think it's only appropriate if I actually take a little green onion and garnish it. Nice little garnish on there. Let me just put it for you plain and simple. This is disgusting. When I was kegging it, smelled like a fart, made me gag. And you might see this man throw up on camera today. So I guess without further ado, let's give it a sniff. Oh my god. Yeah, that smells like shit. That's so gross. All right. Well, let's just do it. Let's just do it. Cheers. Cheers. Oh my God. Holy fuck. Well, that immediately hit the gag reflex. It might have been one of these little onion pieces that just straight hit my uvula, but this is absolutely disgusting. This is the worst thing I've ever put in my mouth in my entire life. This is filth. This is an abomination to the homebrewing community. This is just no. I wholeheartedly and very full of conviction give this a 1 Bro Soda out of 10. This is fucking trash. No. Don't ever brew onion into beer. It just doesn't belong whatsoever. So, well, I'm gonna go to bed after this. That's all the time I have for tonight. So, thanks for watching another episode of Wheel of Beer. Cheers. Fuck. God, that is so fucking gross. Stop the filming. That is...
Was it really that bad?
Dude, as soon as I tasted it, boom.